The HR Happy Hour Network is sponsored by WorkHuman. The role of HR is changing fast, and the leaders who move beyond administration into true business leadership will have the edge. WorkHuman Live is where that shift becomes real. 4 transformative days in Orlando built around the challenges HR leaders are facing now. With 65 plus standout speakers, you'll get practical, research backed insights that you can use immediately, along with honest conversations with leaders under the same pressures and a human first experience designed to energize you, not exhaust. It's why 93% of past attendees left inspired and why you need to be there this April 27th through 30th. Register now at workhumanlive.com and use code HR Happy Hour before February 28th to save 20%. That's HR Happy Hour, all one word. Thanks for joining us.
Welcome to the System of Record Show. My name is Steve Boese. I am thrilled for today's show. Right now, the conversation around AI at work is almost exclusively around knowledge workers, desk workers, people who stare like me at monitors all day. We know about dashboards and agents and coding assistants, right? We're talking about that constantly. You see that a lot in the media. We're talking less about where real work gets done, right, in America and around the world, quite frankly, in factories, in distribution centers, out in the field, by frontline workers. By any estimates, 55, 60, 65% of the U.S. workforce are frontline workers. AI is playing a role there. And we want to talk about that today on the show. And we have a great guest who can talk about that with us. He is Chris Kuntz. He's the VP of Strategic Operations at Augmentir, which is a fascinating company that's sitting at that intersection of empowerment of the frontline worker and bringing advanced technology into the enterprise to support these workers. So, Chris, welcome to the show. How are you today?
Great, Steve. Thank you so much. Really excited to be here. And as you mentioned, I think this is such an important topic. It isn't talked about enough. These deskless workers that represent the majority of the workforce, they're underserved by technology. But I think there's a real unique opportunity on using and applying AI to augment these workers, and in a different way, not replace these workers, but
Right.
augment and empower them to do their best work. So really excited about this conversation. And again, thank you for having me on.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. Let's start with, for folks who may not be familiar, first, I'd love a little bit more about you. We talked a little bit in the pre-show. You live in my former home base, Rochester, New York area, which I have fond memories of. But let's learn a bit more about you, Chris, and then tell us about Augmentir and how Augmentir sits in this enterprise ecosystem.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So I live, born and raised in the Rochester area. I live here with my family currently. Myself, I have 30 years or so in the emerging tech space, mostly focused in the industrial software side of things, varying roles, mostly on the go-to-market side. But I've been fortunate to be part of a team of serial entrepreneurs where we have built companies that have been at the forefront of some of the most exciting advancements in technology in the industrial sector, dating back 20 plus 30 years ago. Our last endeavor was ThingWorks, which was an industrial IoT application, pioneered how industrial equipment becomes smart and connected.
Nice.
And it's interesting that I bring up that analogy is because when we left and the team decided to come back together, we looked at the industrial space, specifically in manufacturing, and recognized, talking with customers, recognized that the humans were the missing piece of this whole industrial transformation, industry 4.0, 5.0, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
That equation, the humans have been largely underserved by technology in this whole space. And so how can we, just in the same way that we made equipment and machines smart and connected, how can we do the same for the humans? And it's become more of an important topic now post-pandemic. And if you look at the manufacturing workforce 5-7 years ago versus today, completely different, a new set of challenges. And I think technology plays a big role in helping to offset some of the issues caused by those challenges.
Yeah. Thank you, Chris, for that background, and appreciate you sharing that. And I agree with you totally, right? Like the shift in the requirements and the expectations in the frontline workforce, in the manufacturing workforce is quite remarkable. And then at the same time, we continue to hear that employers just can't find enough folks as well. So that sort of indicates to me that employers today have got to try to get a little bit more efficient, get a little more productive, get people up to speed faster, right, when they do get hired in. And these are all applications where AI can step in and play a role. So let's talk a little bit about Augmentir and how you support your customers in actually making those production enhancements or those transformations possible.
Sure. Yeah. So Augmentir, we're an AI first company, founded and launched the product in 2018. And what we focus on is what we consider to be the most important problem in manufacturing today. It's the impact of not just a smaller workforce, but a less skilled and less experienced workforce.
Hmm.
If you look at the average tenure rate 5 to 7 years ago was, you know, 20 years. Now it's, less than 3 years. The
Wow.
time in position is down from, 7 years to 9 months. The job quitting rate in the first 3 months of employment is up 50%. So HR leaders need to rethink how they're onboarding workers. You can't spend 6 months onboarding a frontline operator if they're going to leave in 3 months, right? It's just not. It's
No,
not going to work
yeah,
anymore.
that level of churn, the cost to the cost in
Right.
cost and hard cost as well as lost productivity is
A-
astounding.
Absolutely. And so you think about it, yes, there's a skills gap. Yes, there's a labor shortage, but it's an experience gap as well.
Hmm.
And that causes issues. It causes safety issues, causes quality issues, product recalls. It causes downtime. A lot of that can be attributed to human error because the workers, they're human. They make mistakes, and if they're less skilled, less experienced, they may make more mistakes. And so
Hmm.
we focus on addressing that. And the technology space that we're in, most of the industry calls it the connected worker space.
Hmm.
Um, but what we're thinking about is here connecting these historically disconnected workers and connecting them in the way, not just with a phone or a tablet or a wearable device, but connecting them to the digital thread of the business. So they are integrated through a single interface into the ERP systems, the learning management systems, the
Okay.
HR systems, and they can be an active participant in the digital ecosystem of a manufacturing environment.
Chris, thank you for that. How does this show up then? So if I'm one of these workers, say in a manufacturing environment, and the customer's working with Augmentir to improve workflows, to improve training, et cetera, et cetera. What would be one or two of those kind of use cases where me, like as that worker, would see this and reflect in my workflow or my day to day?
Yeah. So one of the interesting things about manufacturing, and you can say industrial in general, because energy, utilities, mining, oil and gas, they're all, similar in a way where if you look at broad set use cases of equipment operation, maintenance and repair, safety, quality, and employee training and workforce development, those are common across many sectors in manufacturing and in any industrial setting. And not just that they're common, but there's standard work that you have to follow to ensure that safety is upheld, to ensure that processes are followed, to ensure that a
Right.
product is created correctly. And historically, many of those work procedures were done on paper,
Yeah.
or in someone's head, right? And so we look at this as a digital maturity where first you're digitizing work procedures, but once you digitize work procedures and digitally connect workers, you can then learn a lot about how they're working and
Hmm.
what they're working on, what their skills are, what their certifications are, and how they're actually performing on the job. With that data, then you can act more intelligently on how to improve their performance, how to potentially reskill or upskill, how to drive continuous improvement efforts. So broad set from a use case standpoint, safety, quality, maintenance, equipment operation, those are common across all of our customers. And really, digitally connecting those workers, using that data to continuously drive improvements within the operation.
Yeah, the thing that I was thinking about, Chris, is you were describing that use case was, it seems to me that the level of information and potential insight that feeds back up to the plant managers or the line managers, whoever the case may be, that's got to be quite remarkable as well compared to, say, backward looking reports, at the end of a shift or the end of a week, right? Can you talk to me a little bit about the types of information and maybe decision support tools that become available to folks who are making those
Yeah.
decisions?
So it's really interesting when you think about skills and certifications for frontline operations. It's sort of like a driver's license. We took our driver's test, we passed the driver's test. That says nothing about how we're driving a car today, 10
Right.
years later, 5 years later, whatever it is. And so what we're able to do now with a digitally connected workforce is capture information on how those workers are performing. And that could be, we capture dozens and hundreds of data points, but it could
Mhm.
be how long did it take them to perform a routine? It could be what was the output of that procedure or that job? Did it result in scrap? Did it result in rework? Did it result in
Mhm.
a safety incident? Did it result in equipment downtime? Um, did they have to repeat a step 5 times? You know, if they're going through a procedure and it's a digital procedure and there's a little helper that says, here's how you open the back panel of this filler before you perform a cleaning routine, did they have to
Mhm.
watch a video on that 5 times? Those are all indicators of something, right? They're
Mhm.
indicators of your competency and performance level, or potential indicators where their targeted training might be important, or where the content is lacking, and maybe the content needs to be improved. And so being able to surface all those signals, we have a library of dozens of machine learning algorithms that take that information and surface insights into where are the continuous improvement opportunities. Is it in the individual? Is it in the work process? Is it in
Yeah.
the cohort of workers that have been, trained or onboarded in a certain way? And so
Mhm.
those surface incredible insights for manufacturers that they didn't have before. And, yes, if you had a very stable workforce, you might just know who knows what and what they're good at
Mhm.
and what they're not
Right.
good at. But with the dynamics of today, when they're changing so often and job quitting is up, you don't have that information, in the back of your mind. It's not as available. And so being able to surface those insights is incredibly important. And that's where I think, when we started, one of the first applications of AI was to surface this data around continuous improvement. But it's now gone way beyond that when you think about factory assistants, and AI agents that can then act on this data. It becomes incredibly important and incredibly
Mhm.
interesting.
Yeah, I want to come back to AI agents in a second. But one of the other things that I thought about is I thinking, we always look at work through our own lenses sometimes, right? And I think about some of the jobs I had back when I was younger in industrial settings, and a couple of places I worked where it wasn't AI at the time, but it was, we had pretty substantial monitoring things and performance tracking going on. And I'd love for you to comment a little bit about how you guys think about the worker experience with some of this, and vis-a-vis like tools that are empowering and enabling and supporting training, right? Versus, hey, I'm really feeling like I'm being watched overtly, right? Or I'm being micromanaged, or I'm being monitored, whatever the term you like. How do you guys think about that from a balance perspective, right? Because these are people, right? They're not machines themselves, right? I love your thoughts on that, and maybe some of the feedback you see from the field from folks who are implementing these systems.
Yeah. So what's really interesting is, so we certainly aren't the first company to think about digitizing work instructions and putting technology in the hands of workers. I mean, that's been going on for years. The difference is looking at it from a operational standpoint versus looking at it from an HR standpoint and worker empowerment. Many of these workers, all they want is to be empowered to do their jobs
Mhm.
correctly and safely, so they can go home that night, so they can,
Yeah.
not struggle, not feel like they're contributing to the problem, but feel like they're contributing to solutions. And so when you think about, when you put your HR lens on this, you can then look at what information can I give workers so that they can do their jobs safely and correctly. Can I reward them or badge them if they are contributing to a solution? They detect an oil spill. Do they submit that in their digital device as a safety incident
Mhm.
report? That's an indicator. That's a sign that
Yeah.
worker is engaged. It's a
Sure.
great signal for HR, right? How do I reward them for doing that? How do I reward them for um, efficiency on procedures? And so I think really, and this is also bringing together HR and operations where they've
Yeah.
historically been,
It's a great
quite
example. Yeah.
connected.
Yeah,
Um,
been completely disconnected. I've done this
yeah.
show for 15 years, Chris. I've had 2 conversations maybe about connecting HR digitally, right, to operations. It's just not a topic HR talks about at all, as far as I can
No.
tell.
Well, and just a quick story. One of our customers, long customers, Colgate Palmolive, and many customers come to us with this. So they're like, okay, let's focus on use cases, maintenance, quality. Maybe those are use cases I want to focus on first. And so they're digitizing procedures. But then they come across this issue is how do I know when to schedule work for someone or if they're able to do that work? Oh, it's in some skills matrix somewhere that's
Hmm.
in a spreadsheet in some HR system.
Hmm.
Well, the operations lead doesn't have access to that, or maybe they have to go find it and log into a
Right. Go
system.
find it.
What if you
Hmm.
could, take that skills matrix and put it in the same system that's driving the operational work? Isn't that
Yeah.
fantastic? So that's what we have, the ability to pull that in. Um, but they're so disconnected today, and then once you can do that, now HR can look over and say, oh, now I know where the gaps are. Now I know where the reskilling or upskilling or potential, targeted training needs to happen. Now I can measure the effectiveness of my training. A big black box. If you talk to HR folks, they're like, I don't know how to justify my budget because I can't measure the effectiveness of training. Now they can, right?
Right.
Bringing together those two sides, I think, is a big piece of this for sure.
Yeah, and the worker empowerment angle here, Chris, I think is I don't want to underestimate that. I think you were spot on when you said the vast majority of folks, they want to come in, do a really good job, see some success, see the results of their efforts, understand how they're contributing to the goals of the team, the goals of the shift,
Yeah.
the goals of the company, et cetera. And then, be fairly rewarded for that, of course, as well, via recognition, of course, via compensation, all the things, right? And making this through line between, those desires, right, and those outcomes is, to me, is like where you guys are sitting, which is such an important place, in the employee experience. And again, I think really, really important as well.
Another
Chris,
quick thing,
go ahead. Yeah.
sorry, I wanted to just dive into this because you mentioned, is it someone looking over your shoulder and, the
Yeah,
worker?
I was thinking that a little bit.
So
Yeah.
what's really interesting is our most successful customers, when they're rolling out a connected worker solution like Augmentir, they're involving their frontline workers and their operators early on in the process so they
Mhm.
can be part of that feedback loop, part of that change management process, because it is disruptive, right? But our most successful deployments are ones where they're involving the users early on in the process and they feel like they're part of the solution, which
Mhm.
completely removes that, hey, there's this digital technology looking over my shoulder, right? It completely removes that insecurity.
Yeah, I love that. And that's one of the fundamentals, right? We've talked about forever, right? Especially in enterprise tools, right? How do you get buy-in? How do you get
Yep.
success? How do you make sure that what you're deploying isn't just another, oh my God, here's another admin tool,
Right.
right? That someone's going to require. Yeah. The key here, and I think I read this in some of the Augmentir literature, it's about helping the technology enabling people and serving people, not making people just serve the technology, right?
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
CRM has been like that forever. I know I talked to folks who hated their CRM because they felt like all I ever did was type data into my CRM and never helped me do anything, right?
Yeah.
All I did was put what I did into that and I never got anything back, right? But
I love the stories that we get from our customers, the operators. The quotes that we get from the operators are the best quotes. Yeah, it's great to get it from the supply chain leads that are talking about technology, how it's transforming their business and whatnot. But to get positive feedback from the operators on how it's making their job easier, how it's
Mhm.
making their life easier, that's what's rewarding about this. I mean, they're truly embracing it as technology that's supporting and enabling them versus anything else.
Mhm.
And that really hits it home for us.
Yeah, I think that makes perfect sense. And when you're impacting, I think the most effective and the most I don't know, just inspirational kind of stories we hear in the tech space, because it can be kind of cold and it can be kind of dry at times, right? But when you distill it down to its impact on individuals who are real people with often very hard jobs, right? Not physically demanding jobs, cognitively taxing jobs that require really skill and attention and physical, all that. And you can make those lives better and make those jobs better. I don't think there's anything more important, right, in what we do as technologists and how AI is getting applied and other technologies are getting applied. It's a really noble thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Chris, you mentioned agents, right? And I feel like in 2026, talking about the extension of AI into agentic is I mean, I guess it's a requirement. The HR side is talking about it constantly. I probably spent the last half of 2025, every conversation I had with a technology company was talking about their slew of agents. And I guess you guys are talking about it too. Is it something that's really going to change how we support workers and enterprises are going to implement these tools, like actually configuring, enabling, and activating agentic AI in the enterprise? And I'd love for your comments on that. And then how is it showing up, if it is showing up so far?
Yeah, absolutely. So what's interesting for us, we're AI first company. We've been using AI since the beginning. What we started out is on the data side. So using a series of machine learning algorithms that assess the data that's collected from frontline operations and from workers to improve and continuously improve their performance. And what we talked about previously, in what was it, 2023, we launched our factory agent. It's called Augie. That's more of a generative AI assistant. So
Okay.
if you think, Gemini, ChatGPT, but
Sure.
for the industrial setting. And why is that different? Because that factory assistant has to know who you are, what skills you have, what job you're working on, what machine
Yeah.
you're sitting in front of. It has to have context into the work because the answers it gives you has to be, you know, correct and very relevant to your job, right? Um, but then with agents, I think it's taking that to the next level where these are really digital workers. They
Hmm.
are digital workers acting alongside humans in a factory setting. Um, they are intelligent. They can act on data. They can do, that invisible work, right? That work of um, trying to understand where the continuous improvement opportunities exist. Trying to do. I mean, there's a lot that's happening, right now in terms of like, materials ordering or scheduling optimization. There's a lot of that, but we think it can even go down to the true frontline operations in the next level. If you think about a training agent, a digital lean coach,
Hmm.
a skills agent,
Yeah.
or like a 5 why agent. When you think about like root cause analysis, why is the machine going down all the time? And I'm doing my 5 why analysis and I have my team of continuous improvement engineers doing all this stuff. Why not have a digital agent
Hmm.
sitting there as a worker that has access to all the data, has access to all the equipment information and the history of that equipment, has access to all the worker information. You can ask it questions,
Yeah.
or you could say, act on this data when these conditions happen, because that's what's going to save me time. Then I can do my human work, right? Um, and so agents as digital workers, it's happening. It's really exciting what our customers are saying. Hey, we're going to build a quality agent. It's going to do X, Y, Z. It's just fantastic,
Yeah.
to hear the stories. But the other really important thing is early on, there was this, okay, so how do we trust agents, right?
Hmm.
Like,
Sure.
can they start a line? Can they stop a line? Can they do a shutdown? It gets kind of scary when you think about humans are sometimes there. And so we developed what we call the 6 laws of agents in the industrial setting, which
Okay.
helps to sort of safeguard agents for industrial use. Um, and so things like, you know, you have to, anything that's generated with AI has to carry that label, so if it's
Okay.
a troubleshooting guide that's generated with AI, which could be completely relevant, you have to have a disclaimer that it was generated with
Yeah, that
AI.
makes sense. Hmm.
An SME might have to like put their stamp of approval on it or something. Um, Even down to things like no generative AI when you think about human safety, right? You can't
Right.
have non-deterministic AI code trying to do something that might impact human safety. That has to be deterministic. And then the concept of humans in the loop. So if if you do have a situation where your AI agent could start and stop a line
Hmm.
or do something impactful, a human has to be in the loop to be able to perform a final level of approval on that step. And I think that helps safeguard, helps put the right guardrails in place, so that these companies, these industrial enterprises, can feel confident that it's truly supporting their operation.
Yeah. Chris, yeah, I think what I'm getting from this, and hopefully the audience is getting as well, is like we're just now tapping in to the capabilities and the potential of
For
some of
sure.
these tools to really transform the experience of work and how work is done at a really hands-on frontline level, outside of the offices, outside of the screens, and where work's getting done all across the country in enterprises and facilities all around the world. And it's wild and it's fascinating because I think I think making work better and a better uh, for everybody is kind of why we're all here, right? No
Right.
matter what
Right.
where we're sitting, and especially these jobs, which can be so difficult and so challenging. And honestly, right, as you said, folks are coming into them maybe not totally prepared. The technology on the
Exactly.
operations side is advanced. That's probably another show, right? How operations technology itself and the requirements and the knowledge that these folks need to have is quite a bit different, right, than it used to be 10, 20 years ago for sure as well. And so keeping up's a challenge, right?
Yep.
Uh, One of the things, Chris, I guess the last thing maybe I want to talk about a little bit is um, I think we touched on it a little bit with agentic, but you guys are probably working with some of the very progressive, forward-thinking companies that are really thinking about, hey, how do we make work better? How do we improve outcomes? How do we improve safety and processes? What's exciting you about the next year or two in the frontline, worker space, connected worker space? What do you think? Boy, this is going to be really interesting to watch, and we're working on this really cool thing. Whatever the case may be, what's got you jazzed up? Because I can tell you're really excited about this, and
Yeah.
you love it.
Yeah, I mean, so we work with some of the biggest companies in the world in different manufacturing sectors. Colgate, Palmolive, Hershey, and these companies are they're truly innovative leaders in their space in terms of think about digital transformation all the way down to the front line. And what's been really interesting is seeing roles created within their organizations like people capability leads.
Hmm.
These roles that blend HR and operations, and they're focused on worker empowerment. They're focused on tapping into, how do we make the performance excellence happen, on the front line. That's what's exciting. They're looking at, what signals can we get from technology that can help improve worker retention, help,
Mm,
reduce onboarding. How do I move training into the flow of work so that, we're not slogging through 6 months of onboarding time. And it's really exciting to see companies embrace the HR angle and to see that come together. I think it's really exciting to see these companies look at truly ways to augment the workers. I mean, no one in manufacturing anyway, no one wants to fire anyone. I mean, they
right.
can't find anyone to hire anyway. There's such a job shortage. But they're truly looking at what things can I do to empower the workers to make them feel better about themselves, and then that may be tied to salary or promotions, or maybe tied to, certain, bonuses based on performance. But that's what's really exciting
Yeah.
is taking the people side of it forward. And again, these companies, I think, Hershey recently put out a great article on this, and really the blending of, I mean, we hear about it all the time, people, process, and technology.
Sure.
We all hear about that, but sometimes it's not as easy to do, right? And the companies like the Colgates and the Hershey's that do that well and really include those frontline workers in as part of their digital transformation strategy. That's true innovation there. So
Chris, man, that is a great way to sort of sum up the conversation. I'm excited. I wrote down. I want to go get in touch with the Hershey folks and talk to them about it, because it sounds like, first of all, it's Hershey, right? Who doesn't love that? But
right.
just to talk about that experience would be, I think, a fascinating maybe follow up to this conversation. But um, I'm super excited, Chris, that we were able to talk to you today and really start to pull the blanket down from what's really happening with these advanced technologies on the front lines, because I think it's fascinating, it's exciting, it's empowering, and Augmentir is like at the forefront of it, doing wonderful work. So I want to thank you again. For folks who want to learn more, certainly about Augmentir, we just send them to the Augmentir website, Chris.
Yeah, augmentir.com. Yep. And happy to, connect on LinkedIn. If you can search for me on LinkedIn, happy to connect and answer anyone's questions offline for sure. So yeah, this is
Yeah,
a
this
great,
is
great
great. And again,
conversation
and
here.
if
I think
you're
it's
if
super
you're
important.
yeah, if you're an HR person listening to this show, which I'm sure there's plenty, I think you can really think about what Chris talked about making those key connections between kind of the HR kind of things on training, on skills development, on workforce planning, right, and recruiting, right, and onboarding, and the real outcomes that are happening in operations, on the lines, and how traditional HR tools aren't going to be enough, right, to help you make those
Right.
connections, because they're just not, right? You need more, and you need to think a little bit differently about it. And certainly working with folks like Chris and the team at Augmentir would be a great opportunity for you. So Chris, thanks again, man. It's been great to meet you. Shout out to Rochester, New York, my old hometown. I miss it, but hopefully I'll get back there soon. And thanks again for joining us on System of Record today.
Yeah, thank you very much. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Awesome. Great stuff. So thank you to Chris again. Thanks everybody for listening. Check out all the shows on the HR Happy Hour Network. Go to hrhappyhour.net and follow along. System of Record coming back soon, hopefully with stories from the front lines of the candy factories. Anyway, my name's Steve Boese. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time, and bye for now.